So, hi everyone. I'm here today with.
Peyton.
Hi Peyton. I hope your week was nice. I hope you had a lot of things going. Could you please tell us a bit about who you are? Present yourself and say why you're here today.
For sure. So my name is Peyton. I am a podcaster myself. I live in Canada and I do a podcast called Those Trans Guys. So I work full time, but the podcast is basically like my little passion on the side, and I've been doing it for the last 2 years, and I'm always learning and growing with it, but it's been quite a good opportunity so far.
Nice. How did you get the idea of starting a podcast? How does one start a podcast?
I don't think I necessarily had a day that said, I'm going to do a podcast. I just wanted to do something and I wasn't sure what it was yet. I think in the back of my mind, I thought about maybe writing a book or trying to be on some like public speaking type things. But at the end of the day, the podcast stood out to me. And once I started to record an episode and little snippets for it, it all kind of clicked. And then I went from there. So basically, the purpose behind my podcast was to share my story, but also educate others and inform others and just have a voice and let everyone know that they're not alone.
Ooh. So you talked about educate people, to educate others. Could you tell us a bit more about your podcast? What do you do in your podcast?
So I try to keep a relevant flow with everyday topics, but I also have been trying to bring up more touching subjects that maybe not everyone wants to discuss. So I try and keep it for the most part upbeat, but the basis of my podcast is to share and educate in a way that not everyone knows because I'm the one that has lived through this journey and this transition. So, that being said, Google doesn't know everything. And I think hearing it from someone who's going through it is a little bit more personable for sure. And also a little bit more of a relation. And it also helps not even just people in the LGBT community, but also every other person in the community who might not know enough or might want to learn enough. And so it's a one of a kind podcast that I know there isn't one out there like that. And that's what makes it special. And that's why I'm glad that I can share my story.
That's really nice. I love the way you talk about just educating others, but not only on that subject to keep it relevant for everybody. The inclusivity of it is really, really cool.
Yeah, that's something that is important to me. And I'm surprised that there's people out there who have reached out and have thanked me for that. And that's really the end of the day goal. A lot of my family and friends and my new partner and everyone in my life who cares about me, they all just want to learn and they want to, instead of asking me questions all the time, this is a good way for them to learn through me. And they always laugh because they're like, oh, I put it in my car or like when I'm at home cleaning. And it's like, it's kind of nice to know that they're listening to me and, and listening to the episodes and being educated. But it's not even just those people in my life. I like to educate and help others from around the world. And they might be scared because of their religion or where they're from. And so I just want to have another outlet in a way and help someone. And wherever it goes with that, that's what matters to me most.
Yeah. It does something to you when like your friends or family start to listen to your podcast and they come back with like little comments about it. It has
Yeah.
happened to me in the past weeks where some people that I knew were like, "Hey, so I've listened to your podcast. I've done this or that." Um, I think so. When I did the episode on love, I had a friend of mine being like, I've actually tried to count the number of times where you said love in that episode, and trust me, you're annoying. You said it way too much." And I was like, ah. least I stayed within the theme. But yeah, it also it it does something to know they're listening.
It does. It does, and then it makes you want to do more for the next episodes and just be better in a way, to better yourself and your podcast. And I've had some feedback too. Like I had some time this last few weeks where I've had lots of more episodes with people in different collabs and all sorts, and so it's been really exciting and a good growth opportunity. But I've learned to not put them all out at once, and so I've been learning to just space them out and not be like, here's four at a time. So I'm learning in that sense. And my family friend or family member was like, hey, you should probably record them and then just put them out slowly. And I was like, you're right. I was excited, so I put them out fast. But that's a good thing to keep in mind when someone's listening. It's like having four new episodes instead of just one, and then looking forward to the next one.
Yeah.
And then I don't love to always listen back on my episodes, but I do sometimes just to kind of see how it flows. But the way that I've set it up is a way that it's smooth and it's not choppy and it cuts in and out really well, and then just listening to make sure the audio is always good. So there's always little things you're always listening to, but having the feedback from someone who listens to it regularly is nice because they pick up on things more than you would. So
Yeah.
I didn't know that not putting four episodes out at once is a bad thing. It's not a bad thing, but it's just little tidbits of information that go a long way and helps you to be more aware of the listeners and what they're expecting.
Yeah. It is it is sometimes hard. I usually record my episodes on Saturdays, and there's always this little thing in the back of my mind where I'm like, just put it out there now. Come on, just give it out. And I'm like, no, wait, Monday. Wait for Monday, god damn it.
Yeah.
Okay, so which subject did you want to talk to us about today?
I think the most prominent one I'd have to say is just basically sharing my story and the struggle that I've had in ways because I paint a picture of like this really awesome transition where nothing went wrong and everything was peachy. But there's more behind the scenes, and that's partly why I started this podcast, was because there's more to being a trans guy than you think, and there's more than meets the eye. And my partner's sister actually asked the other day, and she didn't know if it was insulting or not, but she said she didn't know if it was okay to ask, but she didn't know how to ask. And so she wanted to know that, like, you don't look like you're trans, basically. And I was like, well, that's very flattering because sometimes in the world, people stand out more than others, and it's not necessarily to say that they intended that to be, but it's based on the person themselves. And so a lot of male to females have a harder time than, say, myself, where we so-called pass, which is a term we use where hormones can make a huge difference and we don't necessarily need to do much more. I mean, we can style our hair or clothes and stuff, but that part is important for us because we seem to blend in with society more and we're not outed as much as some are. And so that's the sad reality of it. And unfortunately, that's what's happened with that type of transition for that person. But for me, I like those kind of feedbacks and comments because it just reassures me that I'm passing in society, but I still don't forget about those other struggles that people face. So there's a lot of key components in the transition that not everyone knows about, and those are little things that I've discovered myself as I went along. It's not like Google tells you everything. That's why this podcast is important to me, because there's a lot of things I want to help others learn about and they're aware about. So from like name changing to all the documents that takes to the gender marker, which makes a whole big difference in everyone's lives for sure. Seeing that one little letter appear on your ID now is like, it's life changing. To having surgeries that you'd like, to the whole steps about starting the journey and what you're faced with, and the stigma and the backlash that you might face. So there's a lot of undercover things that I'd like to discuss because they are relevant and they are there, and we just don't always realize them. So learning a lot through my own journey, but also wanting to share also with others because that's helpful for them and gives them more of an open eye and an open mind.
Hmm. You you said that as a trans guy, it is easier to pass for a guy that did not go through transition. I'm trying to
Correct.
make it word my sentence correctly.
Yes.
Um, would you say that you enjoy looking extremely quote unquote masculine? And is it harder for trans guys who don't want to appear extremely masculine to feel like they are actually trans guys or guys in general?
Not necessarily. I think that the hormones have a lot to do with it, but I was medically put on a dose that was set for my body, and so everyone is different. So I don't seek myself to look more masculine. I just go with what I have already and what works for me. So the clothing and the styling, I've had to learn over the years what works for me and what I like and don't like. And yeah, I might have a bit of a facial hair, but I sometimes shave it, sometimes I don't. So it depends on my day. And same with the haircut. So there's a lot of little things that I'm just working with as it comes and as I grow and discover on this journey. So it's really variant to the person, and sometimes I feel more for others who unfortunately look more feminine and don't have much they can do about it. So that's why the hormones do a lot to help with that, so to say. But there's a lot of other ways you can go about it that still makes you feel more masculine without really having to do much more than that. So it's all individual and specific for those said people.
Okay. Do you feel like you would be more accepted if you looked a certain way as a trans man? Is there something that really truly struck to you that said, I have to look like this to look like how I feel on the inside? Was there any kind of goal that you wanted to reach?
I believe at the time I was trying too hard when I first started to fit into the gender norm and the box and the society's views and what they expect of us. But then I realized that you don't need to, because there's a lot of men out there who are not as tall or who don't have as much facial hair or etc. I realized that it's not about society, it's about me, and it's about how I like to be seen in the world. And I've made my own image and what works for me and comfort wise and confidence wise, which took a long time. But now I'm at a point where I am just myself. And that's, I think, the most beautiful part, because no one else is like me and no one dresses like me, and no one else is going to be like me. There's only one of me. Same with you and same with the person across the street. So I did for a while struggle with that, but I think at the end of the day, I've learned to just accept that what's the point of wasting my energy on that? There's no point. It's how I see myself in the mirror and what I feel like I like to look like and present as, and that's what's beautiful about this transition. It is individual to everyone's own journey. So I I did struggle for a while, but then I came to terms with the fact of I was just happy the way I was, and that journey showed me a lot. So I definitely found my own calling and my own story and my own way of living my journey in my life.
I like the way you said it was a beautiful thing. And I guess whether you're going through transition or any other thing in your life, finding yourself and finding your own definition of yourself is something that's extremely hard to just go through and go with. And I definitely hear like the way you talk about it, how it's something that you came to terms with. And I like that.
It's been a journey and an adventure, and I found a lot of it on my own. I also will proud to say I saw a therapist, and that helped a lot, because I was struggling with my past toxic relationship and also struggles with everyday general life and trying to be the best kid I could be for my parents. But then I was talking to my partner about this, and I said, she's like, if it brings you so much stress about trying to make him happy and make you have a relationship with him, what's the point? And she was right. And now I have great people in my life. I have this amazing partner who accepts me for who I am, and my life is great. I have everything and more I could ask for, and I'm healthy and I'm okay, and that's what should matter the most. And I pushed aside all the negativity, and I pushed aside the backlash and the people saying, don't do this, don't do that, and blah blah blah. And it just got to be too much. So I'm living my life the way I want to, and I'm living my journey the way I want to, and I did things for me. And not to say it's necessarily selfish, because I'm the last selfish person ever, but I lived a life that was me, and I couldn't hide anymore. I couldn't be miserable. And now I have this great life and great people in it, and that's what I keep close to my heart. And so this journey has really taught me more than I ever thought about myself, and really found my true authentic self. And that's pretty great, because I was lost for so long, and it's changed my life for the better. Not saying it's everything about me is about this journey, like it all revolves around that, but it's a big important part of it. And it's the part of myself that I had lost for so long, and was seeking to find, and ignored. And that's why I'm so proud of myself, and I did it when I did it, and I'm still learning about myself every day. But the important part was that I came to terms with that on my own, and I used my voice, and I did something about it.
Damn. Um, do you feel like there was anything that you could have done different? Because you talk about being so at peace with your journey, but do you ever feel like sometimes you could have done something different? Or do you feel like the way it is done, and moving on? Do you have any regrets?
At this point, I want to say no. I did everything the way that it was intended to be done, and I did it in a way of that's what felt right in that moment. I really don't think that anything could have been done differently, because everything that was starting off until now, from start to finish so far, because I mean, I'm not saying my journey is done. I'm just saying that the part of my transition is done that I'm most comfortable with. But I look back, and I don't really regret anything, because nothing really happened that I would want to change or reflect back on. I think everything, all the steps and the little movements I made towards getting this journey started, I don't think there's anything that would have made it any better, or any worse. I think that as it was is as it was. So I don't have regrets, and I don't think I could have changed anything. I mean, I was also pretty much struggling a little bit with telling people in my life, like family mostly was the big one. So I think going about telling certain people, like my dad, for example, was harder than I anticipated. And I think I could have handled that maybe a little bit better, and maybe just stood up for myself a little bit more. But I also was prepared for the worst. And so that's what I came into that situation thinking. And that's always kind of been an obstacle for me, honestly. But I think looking at the other parts of it, there wasn't much in a way of I should have done this different, or I regret doing it this way, because everything was so perfectly set up and aligned, and it all just worked. So I don't like to think of regret in that sense. I like to think of I'm proud of how far I've come, and I'm proud of the steps I took to do so, and I did it all on my own. I drove myself to the appointments. I started seeing someone to get onto the transition itself, and I did all the blood work and everything that came with it as a whole. I did that on my own, and I did the steps, and I made it happen.
I do believe that there's true wisdom within the acceptance on who you are and what you've been to be to the point where you are. And it was important for me to ask the do you regret anything? Because I feel like there's always this point in our life where we look back at what we've already achieved, and we sit there, and I'm a perfectionist, so I usually sit down and start pointing out all of the different things where I could have changed like this, or kind of like that. But also, when you look at it as a whole and you're like, this just happened, this is my life. And acceptance is something that a lot of people, I think, do struggle with, whether it's within their journey or at the end of the journey. Because stop, when you stop at all, when you achieve some of your goals, you just don't know what to do next. So I really like the way you talk about being okay with all of it. And I'm also very impressed with how you physically stood up for yourself, whether it was to talk to your father or to go to the appointments. It's something a lot of people are not capable of. So, really well done for that.
Thank you. It was hard, but I look back and I'm glad I had that courage because I had been silenced for so long and I had lost that voice that I didn't want to lose. And that's why now I'm able to stand up for what I want and what I believe in. So, because he had put a lot of backlash on me and a lot of just, no, 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 you can't do this, or I'm not going to be here for you, or etc. So it scared me, but then I thought, why live my life through his life, like it's through his eyes, and live a life that is not actually truly me? Like, what's the point in that when I've been miserable for like 20 some years and living in a body that I am not okay with, and looking in the mirror every day and being just not comfortable and not okay? So I made the steps and I made it happen. And if he was going to be there or not, well, that's his choice and his loss. And I still feel a little bit of not being okay with me completely, and I can see it and hear it sometimes, but that's his own struggle, and I'm not going to wait around anymore for that. I'm going to live my life and rock it, and that's another reason why I just rose above all that and grew and shaped into who I am today. So it's been great, and I'm not ashamed to say I went to therapy because it changed my life for the better, and it opened my eyes to truly who I was and truly parts of me that I was pushing away for so long. So now I'm in such a good place in my life where I can confidently take it and just let it go, and not like before where it would break me down and tear me apart from the inside. So that was parts that I've realized on my own that were beautiful in their own. So, and that's why this podcast meant a lot to me too. So really just sharing my voice and my experiences. And I have some fans, like my mom and my family and friends, who are the biggest supporters, and it's really cute because they're like, "Oh, I just love listening to your episodes, and I get to learn about you and educate and blah blah blah." So it's fun. So, but my goal was just to help, and I'm doing more than that. That's also great too. But I think I just want people to learn, even though it's scary and hard, to use your voice and to live your life for what you want to live it for. And sometimes it might take people longer than others, and sometimes it's easier than others, but it depends on that individual. And I just wanted to pass that on to someone else who might be struggling too, because it saves you a lot of pain and suffering, and it saves you a lot of misery and living a life that's not actually yours. So we each have our own stories, and we're different in our own way, and that's for a good reason. So
I can definitely relate with the telling your father that this isn't his life and you gotta do your own thing.
yeah.
I can definitely relate on that. But I think it's just so cute that your mother listens to your podcast. She listens to every episode.
Yeah, she was a fan from the start, and so she wanted me to resend her the link the other day because she had lost it, and she listened to all of them. So
That's so
it's
cute.
it's really sweet. Yeah. And my cousin actually is a big fan too, and then all my coworkers, it's like they love listening to the episodes, and when something shows up they're like, oh, he made a new episode. So it's just really nice. And a lot of them, or most of them at work, are not as
Mhm.
educated, and they want to be educated, but they're so kind about it. They're not at all naive, and they're not at all insensitive. They ask questions and they ask me to do some topics, and even ones that they've come across and they're like, this one would be a good one. Can we talk about it? Like, sure, no problem. So it's nice to have that support. I wasn't expecting it and I wasn't hoping for it, but it happened, and it's just another reason to keep doing it because it helps people, and it's not just me talking to a microphone. So
I can definitely feel that one.
yeah, I don't want to just talk to
Yeah.
myself for half an hour, but to know that my topics at hand are helping someone, and also people that know me too. It just goes a long way, and it makes me more motivated to do it.
Yeah. It's
It brings me
definitely
joy.
when people who actually know you and they know your story, they listen to the podcast and they're like, "Yeah, I was there for that. I was there for that. Oh, wait, I knew about that thing before, but I did not know that part." And in some way it's creating another way for people in your life to show up, kind of, and to follow you into the big journey. This is literally like launching a podcast, because when you launch one, people don't realize the amount of things that there is behind. It's not just like buying a mic and starting to talk. It's a lot of it. And when people just actually show up to it, it just changes so many things for you. I don't know about you, but it just it makes me smile every time someone like makes a comment about it, because I'm like, "Hey yo, you listen." It's really
Yeah,
really cute.
it is cute, and it's nice to know that someone's listening. So, and not just like the general population out there in the world. It's actually someone who knows you personally, so, and gives you some feedback. It's
Yeah.
just nice, and I always take feedback too, even from the ones that I love so much, and because they're the ones that are listening, and they're the ones that get to hear it firsthand. So, and some of them jump on it as like fast, like as soon as I post it, they're on it listening. So it's kind of cute. So they get excited. They're like my biggest fans, and it's like I'm not a celebrity, but thank you.
Adorable. That's so
Yeah,
adorable.
so it's cute actually because they have their little notifications on. I'm like, you guys are crazy.
I
Yeah,
definitely have a few friends who are listening, and a few who actually like gave me long ass they. I've had some of my friends write me like long paragraphs where they were like, "Okay, so like this, and that. I relate to this, and that. What you can improve, this, and that. Let me give you advice on this or that." And I was like, "Oh my god!"
yeah.
Because you realize there's someone behind.
Exactly. But in my honest opinion, I thought yours was so professionally done, and I knew that we would be a good click. And I'm serious because I felt like it just flowed, and it was someone that I think I would really mesh with, and that's why I was excited that we could do this because it just sounded just like I can't even find the word, but it worked. Like it was smooth, it was professionally done. It just sounded like someone I would really get along with and connect with. So it flowed. It worked.
Thank
There
you
was
so
nothing about
much.
it that was like, no, I'm serious. Like it just nothing about it made it seem like rocky or it
Yeah.
worked.
I mean, I'm a perfectionist, so I wouldn't put out there in the world something I wouldn't be completely okay with. I tend to re-listen to each and every episode at least like 30 different times, like taking out teeny tiny little bits, just polishing it all, trying to make it work. But also, it's really funny because sometimes I delete certain words within the track, and sometimes you can just hear me say, "Fucking hell, why am I even talking about this?" It's just sometimes you you gotta work on it. But yeah, making a podcast is really it's an interesting thing because it also brings you to talk about your own self-development and about your
Mm,
mindset and push you to research on the things that you're actually talking about. So in a way it
yeah,
enables you to grow in ways that you wouldn't have if you didn't have that podcast, kind of.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. I get it. And it's already helped me on great lengths too. And looking back on all the episodes and listening to some of them, I have changed a lot since I first started, and it's for the best. And listening to little things and little steps I've made and changes, and it's all just come together in the end. But it's nice to see, even for myself, little things that I'm like, oh wow, like that was a year ago, and look at how far I've come now, and better mindset, and just little things that all kind of come into play.
Yeah,
So it's been nice to look back even on myself too.
it is. I've actually listened to your episode about trauma with Ashley Brex, and I think they're one of your friends, I believe, from what
Yes,
I know.
yes,
And I really sat down and I was like, oh. And usually I listen to podcasts as I do things around the house. For example, two of my favorite podcasts are Make Your Damn Bed by Julie Merica and The Good Go podcast from Georgie Crawford. And as stupid as it sounds, I make my damn bed when I listen to the Make Your Damn Bed, and I do the dishes when I listen to the Good Glow. And I was just trying to clean some stuff, and I put on one of your podcasts, and I actually sat down and started listening. So I was just like with my cleaning gloves on, just sitting down, like, huh. And I actually truly listened to it, and I liked how you were vulnerable and so open to talk about everything. It really struck me as a listener. Do you find that hard?
well, that was one of the, I'd say, harder episodes, but I have known Ashley for some time now, and she's been one of the best supporters and allowed me to be raw and vulnerable. She's really pushed me in a lot of ways, and so that's why I asked her to be on there with me. And I wanted to do this topic because we both can relate, and it was hard, but I wanted people to know that there's hard times and hard um, moments and challenges that can come up. So it's not all peachy dandy, and so I wanted her to be on there, and I trust her, and I wouldn't have wanted anyone else on there. So um, it was hard, and I felt super raw and vulnerable, but in the best way possible, because it was all honest and it was all from my experiences, and I just wanted the listeners to get a better sense. I mean, I know it was hard, it was challenging, and I know for people it might be not an easy thing to listen to, but I felt it was time, and I felt it was the right time and the right person to share it with. She's one of my good friends, and I appreciate her a lot, and her episodes and her podcasts and her whole story that she's done, her self development and everything. So she was really the only person I wanted to do that and share that with, who I felt comfortable with. So yeah, I do apologize for the hard topic because it was hard, but I need sometimes to feel vulnerable, and I need to let myself out sometimes. So
I really don't think you need to apologize for that. I mean, this is your podcast. You do whatever the fuck you want. Truly, come on. But also, it was really interesting because sometimes you ask yourself as a listener the questions that you asked each other. Like, for example, she was asking question, and as a listener, you ask yourself these same questions, like, oh, that's my take on it. Okay. And I really liked I wrote down some quotes from you from that episode. Literally, I have them written down in front of me. And I really liked the way you said, don't let your trauma define you. Don't let it be the one thing that makes you you.
mm,
And I was like, huh, interesting, because I've had my fair bunch of, let's say, bullshit, but it really was liberating in a way to hear how you felt at peace after that.
I did, and I just wanted people to know that trauma doesn't define you, because it doesn't. It's not what makes you who you are. It's a struggle you face, but it definitely doesn't define you in your life. And in a way, I guess it showed me a lot of perspective. And not saying that I enjoyed the trauma at all, because no one does, but it changed me to be the better person that I am today and the stronger person. And I wish sometimes it didn't happen, but I'm not saying that it's a regret either, because like I said, it just makes me a better person and a stronger person to get through what I have. And now she was the best person to do that with, because she can relate, and she allowed that safe space and allowed me to share that, because it's not something I like to always discuss. So
Okay. Well, thank you very much for coming around and just having this conversation about the podcast and your life in general. Because I've been listening to you and I find you truly inspiring in how peaceful you are about talking all of it. I think the one word that I could come up with after just talking with you like this is peace. Literally just peace. And it's
that's
impressive, truly.
that's how I feel too, and that's why I knew that we would work so well on an episode, and it would run so smooth. So, and I'm always open for any other questions or curiosity or anything that comes up. Like, I'm very much an open-minded person, an open book, and want to share my story as much as possible. And of course, not just be light and fluffy. Like, there's other things that are
Yeah.
hard to talk about too, and more pressing things that just you want to know, or anyone wants to know. So it all helps.
So, for some listeners who might feel either like they have questions about being a trans guy or about your life or just you, where can they find you?
So they can find me on my podcast, which is called Those Trans Guys Podcast. It's on Apple and Spotify. I also have an Instagram page, which I unfortunately don't update often enough, but you can find me there, and I'm gonna try and be back on that soon. But it's, Those Trans Guys Podcast on Instagram, but the Apple and the Spotify are where you can find me most, and that's mostly where I'm active enough. And then if you want to email me, you can too. It's just those trans guys podcast at gmail.com. So if you have any questions, topic ideas, or any concerns, I would appreciate that, because I always appreciate those kinds of feedback. But where I'm most active are those two recording pages and listener pages. So that's where I'm active and post every episode. So
Amazing. So, thank you very much.
thank you.
Bye bye, everyone.